Hey everyone, this is Christina again on chapter 3 today of my book of From Darkness to Light, When My Dark World Met the Light of the World. If you're interested in the book, I am connecting the link to the YouTube videos. I know for sure it's on the first video on my YouTube channel. But you'll be able to see all the parts I'm doing a chapter a night. So we'll get straight into it's the third chapter. Yesterday we did touch on the second chapter, which hit more on the domestic violence that I encountered as a child. So chapter 3, Hell Part 2. Christina, your father is dead, were the words I heard from my mother as I got ready to go to school that morning. It had just been a few months since my 13th birthday. My biological father had been ill with the recent diagnosis of brain cancer that viciously was spreading and could not be stopped. I would never have imagined the smartest man I looked up to, whom fed me and changed me when I was a little girl, would be the man now having to be changed, and that I would be teaching him how to hold a spoon so that I could feed him his yogurt. I only got to see my father once before he died. I remember the long bus ride for almost 2 days to visit him in his cancer-stricken and bedridden state. I was so hurt because the last time I saw my dad before this trip, I had insisted that I hang out with him another time. I really wanted to go out with my sister instead. He let me go, but there was never a next time, as he got diagnosed shortly after with brain cancer. Only a few days into my trip, as I sat by his side in the bed, my mother approached me. She had joined me on the trip and began to tell me that my controlling stepfather back home was causing problems and we had to leave California back to San Antonio, Texas. I remember telling her no, that this could be the last time with my father and I just wanted more time. Unfortunately, I didn't get that time and we did leave. My stepfather wouldn't even allow me to talk to my dad on the phone because of his jealousy, and I lived with that regretful pain for years. And I do remember my dad calling to talk to me, and him grabbing the other line and hanging up on him, telling him never to call the house. So my father died, and not too long after I had to return to school. About the time of the bell that morning, I felt an overwhelming sense of despair and sorrow as I began to have an emotional breakdown on the morning they told me about his death. In front of the other kids, I was crying for my daddy, and they began to call me a crybaby. And they laughed at me as I stood in the wall on elementary and fell to the ground outside in the playground crying. The world around me was a cruel place, and I only wished I could escape. It was a place where no love could exist. Truth is even through, all the moves. I always seemed to enjoy elementary. But, not too long after my father died, I made the transition to a bad middle school, and things just went downhill. In middle school, my times in San Antonio were being bullied. I was called gross. I was called a dog. I was called many other horrible things, and I felt inferior. I felt ugly. I felt worthless. The troublemaker guys would break my pencils during tests. They'd put gum in my hair, laugh at me, and then call me the ugly dog. I remember the time that they put my chair in the corner of a class and left me out of a group project. They all laughed at me, and the teacher walked out. What's sad about this is later in life I bumped into a friend from middle school who apparently went through the same thing, where the teacher also would leave the classroom or ignore the bullying. I tear up thinking about the young kids who have to go through this even now. The epidemic is all too real with bullying, as well as the hidden epidemic of teachers not stepping in to stop it. Not too long ago, I saw something on a show about this problem. It was actually said that pretty much every kid who has committed suicide due to bullying has had others, including teachers, see the clues. But they never stopped it before it was too late. In my case, I guess the teachers just didn't want to get involved in the drama. They were female teachers confronting male bullies. I dealt with many other scenarios, some like the one that it led to what felt like a brutal court case. I remember clearly what led to this meeting in court with my bullies. Many watched after school that day as I was attacked walking home. Kids throwing money on the ground and asking the large group of girls that stood before me to kill me or beat me up real bad. Most were from a nearby high school, and I was only in the 6th grade. I obviously was not ready to take anything like this on, and the friends I was with, they were all too scared to get involved. I remember being pinned up on a fence while countless people stood and watched. The girls then had their eyes on something. It was the beautiful gold cross necklace. My father gave it to me before he died. I begged them not to take it from me, but they took it anyways. This was tough for me as a teen, and I lived in constant fear to the point of not eating at school because of the bullying that I would face in the lunchroom. Through it all, I knew that this messed up life must go on, and only because I still could not figure out which suicide method I would use. I thought, how my sister, she chose slicing her wrist, but I wasn't too sure if I could fathom that yet. Or my mother's attempt to swallow every pill in the medicine cabinet right in front of me, but I waited for the opportune time. I guess it really did begin to seem that my mother's statements about God were true these days. My mom used to say to God, we are like ants in an ant farm. He enjoys watching us build and build, hurt, destroy, and then kill each other. And then later he's amused at the sight of all of our life's work falling apart just to start the vicious cycle all over again. See, my life involved a lot of changes. I never really stayed in one school long enough to join my classmates in graduation from it. And outside of changes was the obvious chaotic home environment. My mother had to work all her life trying to take care of me and my siblings, as my biological father, even at a point, encouraged her to sell herself in order to feed my other 2 siblings. They weren't his biologically. He also was physically abusive, but more to the children, specifically to my half-siblings, mostly. I remember having to eat out of a chained refrigerator, as my siblings were forced to watch. It made me sick to my stomach, literally. Eventually, towards the end of my father's life, he came to terms with his wrongdoings, and for that, I'm grateful. But sometimes I stop and think how God has really had his hand on my mother for her to be even halfway sane or alive now. She too had a very troubled upbringing, even worse than what we were facing, and she had also been a victim to many horrible things as a child, including her parents burning all the children's Christmas presents in their front yard because they were drunk and arguing, and she also was kidnapped by sex traffickers as a teenager. Thank God her friend who was trafficked with her happened to escape, and police made it right on time before the international transport of the girls over to the La Sonda whorehouse in Mexico. God, too, had worked on her throughout the years, and I'm continuing to pray for her. Also, as God works to heal many wounds, and currently she is also dealing with many health wounds, so please pray for her. I do commend her for her endurance to not let the trauma lead her to abandoning us, since my father was very encouraging of definitely probably the abandonment of my siblings. There was a really, really bad abuse there, unfortunately. And I'm just grateful that she did not let herself go crazy to the point of severe drug addiction or insanity. The sad fact is this actually does happen to many parents who can't take it anymore. Many even end up admitting themselves into psychiatric hospitals, and children are abandoned into the hands of others. I thank God for sparing my mother's life. I do love you, Mom. And I am just thankful to God that he has got us all to where we're at, which is acknowledging who he is. And even though we're at different levels, I am thankful that he has broke my family out of so much. And I say broke because it did take a breaking to be able to get us where we are now. And that you will hear more about later in chapter 4. All right, guys. Well, thank you again for joining me on this journey. I love you all. And once again, my last chapter, I did speak about domestic violence and how it really hurts. So this one is bullying. If you are young or old, you never know what someone's really going through outside of that place you're bullying them at. There's a lot of stuff going on, and whether they are deserving of the bullying or not, you don't know what's causing them to feel or even be the way that they are. So no one truly deserves it. Truth is, Jesus died for us, and he could have chosen to belittle us for the way we act, but he didn't. He died for us. He loved us. He was merciful and gracious to us. And I encourage everyone to please pray for all of those, especially those who are young in school being bullied. We do not know what these kids are going through at home, and then being bullied at school, sometimes it's just way too much. And my story is a testimony of it, and I'm sure there's many out there who can testify to that as well. All right. God bless y'all. Thank you. Have a good night.